In this session we're going to discuss the grid element. The grid element is a layout or container element in the same way that the stack panel is, but it works a little bit differently. It gives you more fine level control if you want to lay out things in a tabular form. So in order to create a grid, you can open the toolbox and you can drag out the grid element here, or as I've mentioned previously, you can simply define the element. The pages by default, or the windows by default, contain an empty grid. So the grid element, as you know, you can just place elements within it. If you don't make any definitions, it always places within the first row and the first column. It assumes you've always got one row, one column. If you want to lay out in more than one column or more than one row, then we have to define how many columns or how many rows we've got. And the way that we do that is we type grid, column definitions, and grid row definitions. Now within these, we then set up a column definition, and I'm not going to have two tags. I'm going to self-close these just to make them a little neater. For the purpose of this, I'm going to have 3 columns and 2 rows. So again, same thing. So for row definition, I'll self-close that and give myself the second row. So now we can see on the designer here, we've got the 2 rows and 3 columns. I'm now going to take the stack panel that I had previously, and I'm going to place that within the grid. So first thing you do is set up the column definitions using grid.column definitions, and then the row definitions using grid.row definitions, and you define the rows in each or in turn. After that is when you then place the elements within the grid, as you've already seen happening. So I'm going to place the stack panel here. Now if you don't give it any more information, or you don't add the properties in, it defaults to the very first column and the very first row. Now columns and rows, like arrays in C#, are 0 indexed, so we begin numbering from 0. So the first column is 0, second column is 1, third 2, and so on. And the way to put them in, the property here is grid.column, and we're going to say put it into column 1, and you see it's moved over to column 1 here. If we change it to 2, it would move into the third column, and so on and so forth. To define which row you're in, by default it sets to the first or the 0 indexed row. So grid.row, and I'm going to set that to be 1, which will be the second row. And that's how easy it is in order to sort of set up a grid and place elements within it. The key things really to remember are inside the grid, the column definitions and the row definitions are prefixed with the grid because they are properties of grid. So grid.column definitions, and then you can define the column definitions themselves. Same with the row definitions, grid.row definitions, and then the actual properties on the elements that you want to place within a particular location, grid.column and grid.row. Now there's one more thing I want to show you, and that is at the moment it's set everything to be uniform. So you can actually set properties on the columns. You can say I want a width, a max width, minimum width, etc. And you can set them to auto, or you can set them to a special key, which is star. So if I say width is star on the columns, then this is kind of like auto-sizing them relatively, because I can have say 2 star. Now if you add up all of the number of stars here, I've got a 2 and then another 2, so I've got 4 stars worth of width in total. You can see that the 2 star is taking up half of the width. Okay, and you can use these in any proportions you like in order to sort of space them out. You can also use numeric width definitions here. You can state, you want a particular one to be 100 pixels, whatever else you want to do, as you would normally use the width element. Okay, and it's exactly the same for the row definitions. You can set the height in the same way. Again, it will default to the star for all of the rows if you don't assign that value.